She wore no insignia, just an old gray t-shirt, black PT shorts, and a duffel bag slung across one shoulder. Her boots were scuffed, not polished, not proud, just used. The air outside the admin office at Camp Granite Ridge smelled like morning dust and hot pavement. The door creaked when she opened it. Inside, the air conditioning hummed over the clatter of printers and the rustle of base forms. The admin officer didn't look up fully. Young, tight fade, rigid posture, shirt so sharp it could cut paper. "Ma'am, unless you're active, you can't wear that." She didn't argue, just stood still, waiting for him to finish. Her name was Dana Hartman, once Staff Sergeant Hartman. Now, officially, nothing. No rank, no role, just a woman passing through. She shifted slightly. The duffel strap creaked. The officer glanced up, but still not enough to really see her. His voice was flat with routine. "Civilian contractors must check in through logistics. You'll need to change." She gave a quiet nod, but her eyes were elsewhere. To her right, across the room, was a corridor she hadn't thought about in years. The hallway was narrow, linoleum faded, ceiling tiles yellowed at the corners. Above it, a placard swung slightly in the A.C. draft. Its lettering faded nearly to dust. The plastic cracked at the corners. But to her, the words were unmistakable. "Room 37B, Archive. No entry. Order from 2004. She stared just for a breath, then looked away. "Name?" the officer asked. She replied, evenly. "Hartman." "Dana." He began typing. 17 years ago, she thought that room had been sealed. Demolished. Maybe. The official order was to purge everything connected to Operation Owl, 1375. Not just the files, the people, the record, the name itself. What began in that room had never ended. Not really. 3 came back. She was one of them. The officer handed her a folded base t-shirt. "Regulations," he said again. "You understand." She took it. The cotton was stiff. "New." "I understand," she said. And in her voice, nothing at all gave her away. But behind her eyes, the memories had already begun to return. They called it Owl, 1375. Not a mission, not a campaign. A designation wrapped in code, wrapped in silence. No awards, no commendations, no debriefs. Just a file, an access log, and an order to forget. But forgetting never quite worked. Back then, Dana had been the tactical lead in a unit that didn't officially exist. She was 29, lean, quiet, razor sharp. Her job wasn't strategy. It was execution. Insertion, retrieval, denial. No politics. No hesitation. In the spring of 2004, they were flown into a country no one named, under skies darker than they should have been, into a valley that didn't appear on satellite. 12 of them. Most didn't make it back. Not because they failed, but because what they found wasn't meant to be found. 3 survived the operation. Of those 3, only she stayed silent. She never wrote the report, never gave the briefing. When they landed stateside, she walked off the plane and kept walking. She received no discharge notice, no final salute, just faded out of the chain of command like smoke through wire mesh. She inked the number beneath her left shoulder blade a week later. Star, angular, no flourish, 1375. When asked, she said it was a locker combination, or a date. No one asked twice. Now, 17 years later, a phone call had come. Vince Dalton. He was Command Sergeant Major by title, but Dana knew him as Vince from the old days. Not Owl, 1375. Something earlier, something real. He said Granite Ridge needed pace runners for a new cycle of recruits. Dana hadn't run a track in years. Her knees were slower, her breath shorter. But she said yes. Not because of the recruits. Because Dalton had mentioned something else. "There's new command now," he said. "Internal systems rotation. Someone from archive analysis." That stopped her cold. Most base changes were routine. People moved, titles shifted, but internal systems didn't rotate for no reason. Not into active training installations. Not near sealed rooms. That was 2 weeks ago. She hadn't slept through the night since. Now she sat in the locker room's far corner, the base issue shirt pressed against her knees. Fluorescence buzzed above. Around her, new trainers talked about CrossFit stats and meal plans. She said nothing. Didn't need to. When she bent to unzip her duffel, her t-shirt rode up slightly. Just for a second. Long enough for the edge of the tattoo to show. A junior mechanic walked past with a clipboard. He stopped, blinked, and kept moving. But his steps stuttered. His face had gone pale. He disappeared into the hall. 10 minutes later, the secure line in logistics, unused for nearly a decade, lit up with a blinking green light. A base analyst named Jim Reyes, who once manned a listening post outside Bavaria, picked up the line. The alert code flashed. OWL 1375, anomaly ping. Location, Granite Ridge. Reyes didn't speak, just opened a drawer, took out a laminated card he hadn't touched in 9 years, and walked it to the operations office. Colonel Emma Beck was inside. She was younger than Dana by a decade but had the same steady eyes. "Ma'am," Reyes said, handing her the card. "You'll want to see this." She read the number twice, then once more. Her hand moved to her desk drawer. She took out an old leather-bound log, flipped through it to a page marked only with a red tab. She underlined one entry with a pencil. 1375. Outside, Dana stood on the track. The sun had just crested the trees. Recruits were stretching in nervous clusters. Some glanced at her. Most didn't know what to make of the woman with the calm eyes and the silent gait. She wasn't part of their story yet. Colonel Beck walked toward her, each step deliberate. Behind her, aides followed at a distance. Dana didn't move, just watched. When Beck reached her, she didn't offer a handshake. "Hartman," she said. Dana nodded. "Ma'am, you were OWL 1375. "Yes." Beck's jaw flexed. Then she stood at attention. In front of the trainees. In front of her own officers. She saluted. The recruits stopped mid-stretch, confused by the gesture. A few stood straighter. A few whispered. "Your clearance is reinstated," Beck said. "If you're here for more than pacing drills, I'll walk with you." Dana's voice was quiet. "I need access to 37B. Beck nodded once. "Then let's begin." The hallway to 37B was narrow, lined with scuffed baseboards and walls painted the shade of beige that tried hard not to be remembered. The air smelled faintly of floor wax and age. Dana walked beside Colonel Beck without speaking. The silence wasn't tense. It was deliberate, like two people approaching a grave. Staffers along the corridor stepped aside without being asked. They sensed it. Whatever history moved through Hartman's steps. Whatever weight came with a tattoo that should not have survived. When they reached the door, Dana paused. The placard still hung above it, faded and cracked. The lettering illegible unless you already knew what it said. She reached forward and laid a hand on the handle. The lock was rusted, but intact. Beck inserted a keycard and turned a physical key at the same time. Twin systems. Redundant. Outdated. The door opened with a low groan. Inside, the room was cold and dry. Metal shelving ran along 3 walls, most of it bare. Dust lay thick on every surface. A single fluorescent tube flickered overhead. In the center, a desk bolted to the floor. Behind it, a cabinet sealed in red tape with the old DoD inspection seal intact. Beck stepped inside and peeled the tape back with a careful motion. She keyed in a code on the drawer's panel and turned one final latch. A hiss of pressure escaped as the drawer opened. Inside, 7 folders, all standard manila. No markings except serial codes. Dana leaned in. She pulled one, labeled Asset Alpha C. Her fingers hesitated, then opened it. Inside, a single page. Not what she came for. She closed it, replaced the folder, and stepped back. Beck watched her. "That wasn't it." "No," Dana said. "It's not the asset. It's the observer notes." Beck frowned. "Those were supposed to be destroyed." "I know." Dana turned away from the cabinet and scanned the shelves. One drawer near the base bore a different tag. Faded blue. Foreign serial. She crouched, pried it open. A notebook. Spiral-bound. Water warp. Its pages stuck together at the edges. She lifted it gently. On the inside cover, written in ballpoint, Field Log, OWL, 1375. SSG Hartman. Beck didn't speak. Dana rose, the log in her hands. She flipped to the last entry. June 12, 2004. 4:32 hours. LT Simmons gone. Blood trail stops past second perimeter. Nothing to recover. Private Juno confirmed Kia. Dalton, Reyes. And I held post until evac. Radio out. I burned the SAT drive. No link remains. We left markers. No one will find them unless they know. Closure not possible, but memory intact. SSGD, Hartman. The handwriting was firm, pressed deep into the page. No flourish. Dana closed the logbook. Her hand stayed on the cover for a long moment. Beck spoke softly. "We weren't meant to know." Dana nodded. "But some of us couldn't forget." They left the room in silence. Outside, the afternoon sun had reached its peak. Recruits were still on the field, running laps under the eyes of junior instructors. Dana stepped out beside Beck and watched them. Then, without a word, she walked down to the track. She began to run. Her stride wasn't fast. It wasn't youthful, but it was steady. By the third lap, the recruits noticed. A few picked up pace to match her. By the sixth, they were all following. No orders, no whistle, just rhythm, just presence. By the eighth lap, even the senior instructor stopped yelling. Dana Hartman moved like someone who had nothing to prove and everything to remember. The recruits didn't know her name, not yet, but by the end of the run, none would forget her. The next morning, the base felt different. Subtle shifts. Doors held open a little longer. Conversations paused mid-sentence when Dana walked by. Not out of reverence. Most didn't know who she was, but out of instinct. Like animals sensing the pressure change before a storm. She sat alone in the mess hall, the logbook unopened beside her tray. Eggs untouched. Coffee cooling. Across the room, recruits glanced over their shoulders. None approached. It wasn't fear. It was gravity. A familiar voice broke the silence. You always ate slow. Dana looked up. Vince Dalton. Older now. Gray at the temples. Still broad-shouldered, but less sure-footed. He wore the uniform of a command sergeant major, but he didn't carry himself like one today. More like a man walking into memory. He sat across from her without asking. Reyes called me. Dana said nothing. They flagged your presence the moment that tattoo showed. Still, she didn't respond. Dalton leaned forward, elbows on the table. You remember Juno? Dana's fingers tensed around the coffee mug. He had a sister. Found me on some reunion site years ago. Said no one ever told her what happened. No flag, no citation. Just a folded letter and silence. She didn't get the truth, Dana said. No, but maybe it's time someone did. Dana opened the logbook. Not for Dalton. For herself. She turned to the middle. A page from late May. The entry was short. Mission parameters changed. Insert time moved up by 6 hours. Recon incomplete. Suspected signals from the ridge. Encrypted but recurring. Simmons uneasy. Juno silent. Dalton rubbed his face. God, I remember that ridge. Sounded like whispers on a loop. Never figured out what we intercepted. No one was supposed to, Dana said. That was the point. Beck entered the mess hall, scanned the room, saw them. She crossed quickly. We've got a problem, she said, low voice. Dalton stiffened. Dana simply turned a page. Beck placed a small folder on the table. Inside, satellite imagery. Grainy, unlabeled, a valley, remote, dense canopy, no road access. 3 days ago, Beck said. Unmarked drone picked up movement near this sector. Dana didn't need coordinates. That's where we left the markers, she said. Beck nodded. Intel wants to send a team. I stalled them. Said we needed boots familiar with the terrain. Dalton frowned. That's suicide. No one who was there came back whole. Dana closed the folder. I'll go. Dalton stared at her. Alone? Yes. Beck's expression didn't change. We can authorize a small recon escort. 2, maybe 3. No official record. Dana rose. Make it 1. This doesn't need spectators. Beck nodded once. You'll get clearance. Leave tonight. Dalton didn't speak until she was already moving toward the door. You're not the same, Dana, he said. She paused, looked back. Neither is the valley. That night, she suited up in gear that didn't quite fit. The vest was too new, the boots too stiff, but the sidearm felt right. She moved like someone reacquainted with an old rhythm. No hesitation. Her escort, a quiet corporal named Oakes, met her at the landing strip. He was young, barely out of training. He didn't ask questions. The chopper lifted at 0200. Night wind sharp through the open bay. Dana sat near the edge, eyes fixed on the black outline of the forested ridge ahead. She hadn't seen it since the day they evacuated. Smoke curling up from the tree line. Her ears still ringing. Now it looked the same, but quieter, like something waiting. They touched down just before dawn. Oakes stayed with the bird. Dana stepped into the jungle alone. The air was thick. Every step brought old echoes. The clearing appeared just as she remembered. The broken tree, the scorched patch of soil, the place where Simmons fell. She knelt, brushed her hand over the ground. Something glinted beneath the leaves. A tag, half buried. Simmons. She wiped it clean, slipped it into her pocket. Then she saw it. A small pile of stones, not part of the landscape, stacked deliberately. She approached, bent down. Inside, a metal case, rusted, sealed with tape. She cut it open. Inside, one photograph, black and white. Her unit, standing in a half-circle, smiling. All 12 of them. Someone had been back here. Someone who remembered. She stood slowly, wind rustling the leaves above. She wasn't alone in the valley. Not anymore. She didn't call it fear. What she felt out there. It wasn't the sweat on her palms or the tightness in her lungs. Those were just symptoms. The real thing was older, quieter, a kind of waiting in the bones. She turned in place, scanning the tree line. No movement, no sound, but the photograph, 12 faces, intact, in a place no one else should have reached, meant something. Someone had preserved it. Someone had made that cairn of stones. Someone knew what this place was. Dana slid the photo into her chest pocket and moved deeper. The path had half vanished over the years, swallowed by vines and undergrowth, but her feet remembered it. Past the ridge's north edge, over the collapsed ravine log, to the half-buried sensor that never transmitted. It was still there, dead, burned out from the inside. Next to it, a canteen, bent, dented. She picked it up, ran her thumb over the bottom. Initials scratched faintly into the metal. R.J. Juno. She closed her eyes for a moment. His voice echoed faintly. Dry humor. Steady breathing even under fire. She remembered the way he always double-checked the perimeter, even when they were told not to. He had stayed behind, the last man standing while Simmons tried to reach higher ground. He was the one who went silent first. But now, something new crept into her mind. Why was this still here? They had been told the area was scorched after their extraction. Thermals. Deniability. Nothing should have remained. She scanned again, eyes moving higher, to the trees. A flash of light, then gone. Not a weapon's glare. A lens. She crouched, unholstered her sidearm, and moved into cover. The jungle pressed close. Breathing changed with elevation. She adjusted, kept her footfalls soft. The clearing widened. Ahead, metal, not rusted, new, a small repeater station, camouflaged in burlap and moss netting. Unauthorized. She knelt behind a rock outcrop and watched. Two figures emerged. Not military, not local. They wore dark gear, non-standard, no insignia, civilian tactical clothing, movements efficient. She listened. One of them spoke in low, clipped tones. English. East Coast accent. Transmission burst didn't go through. Must be signal shadow. Reset and boost, said the other. We're on a 3-hour window. Dana stepped out from cover slowly, weapon down but ready. Step away from the unit. They turned. One raised a hand. Who the hell are? He stopped mid-sentence. Because they saw it. The tattoo. 1375. Half visible beneath her shirt sleeve. The first man lowered his hand slowly. Jesus Christ. You're Hartman. She said nothing. The second man turned pale. You're supposed to be dead. That makes two of us, she said. Start talking. The first man hesitated, then nodded toward the repeater station. We're from Internal Systems. Tier 5 Archive Suite. Got orders 2 months ago to scan legacy sites. This isn't a legacy site, Dana said coldly. He swallowed. We didn't know until the beacon activated. Dana's pulse quickened. What beacon? He pointed. Inside the netting, nestled between two control units, was a narrow cylinder no wider than her wrist. Not standard equipment. The marker logs you left. They weren't dead. They were dormant. Her breath caught. They tagged this location as potential resurgence vector. Someone put that note in the archive under red file protocol, then sealed it. She stepped closer. That someone was me. He looked startled. You wrote the red file? No, she said. I buried it. Someone else unsealed it. There was a pause. The second man adjusted a dial on the transmitter. A low hum vibrated the air. What were you hoping to find? Dana asked. We weren't looking, the first man said. We were running diagnostics. Something responded. That word, responded, lodged in her chest. What did? He hesitated. That's classified. She stepped forward, the sidearm tilting slightly. So was I. The two men exchanged a glance. Then the first one reached into a bag and pulled out a tab. He tapped through several screens, then turned it toward her. Lines of code, transmission bursts, audio loops. Then, an image. Grainy, low resolution, taken from drone footage 2 nights prior. A figure, alone, moving through the underbrush. Humanoid, unarmed, but impossibly familiar. Dana leaned closer. It wore BDUs. Faded, pattern long retired. On the shoulder, barely visible, a unit patch she hadn't seen in nearly 20 years. Ghost unit. Owl, 1375. She whispered, Simmons. Impossible, the tech said. No one could have survived. Dana stared at the image. The figure's posture. The angle of the stride. It wasn't impossible. Not to her. She remembered the last thing Simmons said before he vanished past the second perimeter. I'll mark the path. If I don't come back, don't follow. Now someone had followed, and the path was still marked. She stared at the image. It wasn't just posture or uniform. It was the way the figure carried his weapon, low, angled, safe. The way he leaned slightly left on his step, compensating for a break in the ankle Simmons never fully healed. Simmons had been presumed Kia for 17 years, but no body had been recovered. And now, this. Dana backed away from the screen. The air in her lungs felt heavier, like the jungle had collapsed a little. The younger technician, nervous, pale, tried to fill the silence. We thought it might be misidentification. Echo shadow. Visual glitch. She shook her head. That's not a glitch. The jungle around them went still again. Even the birds were quiet. She turned to the senior of the two. Pull your gear. This side is done. He hesitated. We have orders. You've been relieved. He didn't move. Dana stepped closer, her voice steel. I'm not asking. After a beat, they obeyed. Began packing equipment with jittery hands. Neither argued. She kept her eyes on the tree line. The valley was listening. They were halfway back to the chopper when they saw the signal. It was small, deliberate. A strip of green cloth tied to a branch, barely fluttering. Dana stopped. That was Simmons' marker style. No one else used that loophole. She stepped off the trail. The technicians paused, unsure. She didn't call them forward. 50 feet through underbrush, the ground dipped and opened into a low basin, dense with ferns, old ash underfoot. And there, stacked in a careful circle, 12 stones. She approached slowly. In the center, another item, wrapped in oilcloth. She knelt, unwrapped it. Dog tags. 4 sets. Simmons, Juno, Reyes. 1 blank. She closed her hand around them, then looked up. There, carved into the bark of a nearby tree, 3 letters. DH. Her initials. But not hers. They'd been carved by someone else. Simmons had marked it for her. She stood. A sound came through the trees. Low. Rhythmic. Not human. Not machine. A pattern. She turned back to the basin. Took out the notebook from her pocket, the old field log, and flipped to the page before the last. She'd scribbled it down once before, in '04, a sound they couldn't identify. She'd transcribed it phonetically. Now the jungle whispered the same pattern. Not natural, not ambient. It was repeating, calling. The text waited at the trail edge, visibly rattled. You saw something, the older one said. She didn't reply. Instead, she handed him the wrapped oilcloth. These go back to back. Secure route. No digital trace. He nodded. You're not coming back with us? He asked. Dana shook her head. There's something I need to finish. The younger one looked alarmed. Ma'am, with respect, you shouldn't go alone. If that really is. If it's Simmons, she interrupted, he won't hurt me. But the valley. I know this ground better than anyone. She turned, began walking. Behind her, neither man called after her. By the time she reached the western ridge, the sound had changed. Shorter, slower. It was guiding now. She followed it through thick growth, stepping between roots and stone. Every few hundred meters, a new marker, green cloth, stone cairn, once even a scratched arrow on a rock face. She moved deeper than they'd ever gone in 2004. Her breath stayed steady, her weapon holstered. At the final marker, she stopped. A clearing. In its center, a fire pit, long coal, and a figure seated beside it, still, head bowed. He looked up as she approached, hair gone gray, beard heavy, eyes alert but sunken. She stopped 10 feet away. Simmons, she said softly. He didn't move. You came back, he said, her throat tight. So did you. I wasn't sure if anyone would. We tried. They told us it was over, that you were lost. He looked away. I stayed to finish the loop. I thought someone had to. What did you find? He raised a hand, pointed to the forest behind him. They left it open, he said. Whatever it was, it never closed. Dana sat across from him, knees aching. You kept the markers, she said. He nodded. Didn't want to forget. She opened the logbook, placed it between them. Write it down, she said. Everything. He didn't speak, just took the pen, and began. It was evening when she returned to the chopper site, alone. The valley behind her now quiet. Beck stood beside the bird, watching her approach. No questions in her eyes, just a silent knowing. Dana handed her the logbook. There's a report coming, she said, but it's not for them. Beck opened to the last page, then nodded. We'll secure the site. Dana looked past her, to the line of recruits waiting beyond the field, stretching in the dying light. They need to know, she said. Beck tilted her head. Know what? That history doesn't vanish. It waits. The rotors began to spin. Dana climbed aboard. She didn't look back. The next morning, the recruits ran in silence. No cadence, no instructor shouts, just footsteps. Dana led from the front. Her stride was slower now, but unwavering. The way she held her shoulders made the others straight. The way she scanned the field without speaking made them watch their form. On the 7th lap, a young recruit caught up beside her. Barely. He was gasping, sweat pouring down his brow. Ma'am, he said between breaths. Were you really part of that mission? She kept her eyes ahead. Not part of it, she said quietly. I carried it when no one else could. He fell back, unable to keep pace. Dana didn't slow. She rounded the last bend alone, the sun catching the edge of her gray shirt, the faded outline of the tattoo showing faintly beneath the fabric. At the edge of the field, a few staffers watched. No salutes, no applause, just attention. She stopped, hands on her hips, chest rising with breath. Looked across the field, then down the line of faces. You won't read about what matters most, she said aloud. Not for recognition but for clarity. You'll see it in how people move when no one's looking. Then she walked away. No ceremony, no headline. But for those who saw her run, something changed. In the quiet after the drills, one of them picked up a stone, stacked it beside the bleachers. Then another did the same. By evening, 12 stones stood in a small column. No names, no plaque, just a silent mark. Because some stories don't end in documents. They echo, carried forward by those who understand what must never be forgotten.